Well,
but before we begin, I want to say hey to Caben and how's everything?
Yeah.
Oh my
I've
goodness.
actually kind of been through your neck of the woods, like on
fun.
70 going out toward, I did a couple of days of snowshoeing in Lassen and then last weekend went to Table Mountain and I'm like,
That's right.
Caben's around here somewhere.
You could have thrown a stone and hit me from there.
Really?
I mean, you're about 12 miles from me at that point.
Dang. Well, one of these days, because I think orchards are majestic. I mean, you're surrounded by trees, and it's
a pretty good life.
And it's also food.
Yes.
So you're surrounded by trees that give you food. How neat is that?
It's delicious food, very healthy. Yeah, no, we're spoiled, and we're right on the river. So when you're coming down Table Mountain and you cross the Feather River, you actually cross it 2 times down that section of 70. If you were just to get in a kayak right there, you could just paddle right to my house.
Oh my gosh. You're right on the river?
Yeah.
Wow. That is awesome. What a great life. And it's an outdoor life, which is a good segue into.
It is a good segue because we're about to hear all about your great life.
Yeah, let's jump right in. Let's get this going here. This is so excited. We are so glad to have you be a part of this today, Elke. We cannot wait to dive into the conversation. But one thing we always do at the very beginning, I always ask Caben, hey, Caben, what are you drinking? And Elke, I think you've got something prepared too. So, hey, Caben, what are you drinking?
Oh, I'm going to start, even though, I'm drinking, it's a beer tonight. I know usually I'm bringing whiskey to the table. This is Anderson Valley. It's called Old Fashioned. It doesn't even actually describe itself as a beer. It simply just calls itself, this is how hoity-toity this beer is, simply calls itself a malt beverage with natural flavors added, aged in bourbon barrels. That's all you get.
His voice changed there, Elke?
Wow. That's his adult beverage voice.
But it's delicious.
Anderson Valley is one of my absolute favorites. Kind of central, more Northern California, nearest the coast, and is so good. Elke, have you ever had any Anderson Valley beer?
Well, is that the same as what used to be called Boonville?
I think it's close. I think Boonville is near there. Yeah.
Same thing, because I've definitely stopped at Boonville back in the day on my way to Mendocino.
And it is on the way to Mendocino. Yeah.
Like Sea Ranch and those places.
Yeah. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous through there. I have family that lives up in Mendocino. Hard life up there, Northern California coast. But Elke, what are you drinking?
Well, I have a story actually. I was pulling weeds in the back because you know how I do that. It's like gotta be outside. And my neighbor from up behind me he's an octogenarian, and started chatting with him a little bit. Actually, he always asks me about Forlorn Hope because he wants to know, is this being made into a documentary or isn't it? You know, it's like, well, anyway, we started talking about adult beverages and I said, anything with lemon. He said, oh, I have some lemons growing on my tree and I'm going to use them in my martini tonight. So I'm talking to this 80-something-year-old man about adult beverages. It was awesome. So I'm having, fresh lemon picked from his tree about 45 minutes ago with a little bit of Bombay Sapphire and sparkling water.
Oh my gosh. Look at you.
So
Look at you. You're one of the healthiest people that I know, by the way, just the way that's a whole nother conversation. We could get into your diet and how disciplined and how healthy you are. It's so good. It's so good. But I love that. It's so in line with who Elke is and just that creativity and just that amazing freshness that you bring to it. That's so good. Yeah. And you mentioned Forlorn Hope. We're gonna cover that a little bit later on, but I want our listeners to take note of that. That's kind of a big deal that's happened to you recently, and we're gonna unpack that a little bit later.
But first, Chris, what are you drinking?
Yeah, what about today I'm holding up my little, copper mug here. Got a little Moscow Mule going on, a little zesty Elke as well. I'm gonna take a sip.
Totally official.
By the way, do you know why they put Moscow Mules in those beaten tin cups?
I have no idea. I just knew that it was supposed to go in this. I don't know why.
Marketing ploy to have us all buy additional
copper looking tin cups. Yeah. Caben, why is it?
I should have Googled. I don't know, Chris.
I mine's Hydro Flask.
There you go.
Well, whatever it is, and we stick it. So this was in the freezer. So we keep these in the freezer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And makes it extra cold and extra delicious. So yeah, real good.
Mm.
All right. Well, hey, let's jump right in here. Elke, we are so excited, like I said, to have you here. Can you just start off by introducing yourself to our listeners, however you choose to describe yourself? We'd love to hear who you are.
I am Elke Reimer, and I am a very happy person. At this stage in my life, I've got 2 adult kids. I live in Auburn, right on the canyon. I'm looking out to the canyon right now while I'm talking to you, wonderful gentlemen. I love the outdoors. It's absolutely my passion. I love my dog. She goes everywhere with me. I love my job. I work at Riskalyze as an onboarding coach, and I get to work from home. It's like all the dreams I could possibly want are coming true. And it's just great.
That's so good. That's so good. And one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you, and that I know Cabin wanted to have the conversation too, is one, your light that you shine, and it's so obvious. Just even if people can't see you, it's coming through your voice and how you not only describe yourself, but what you do and how you live. But really, the part of the outdoors, and really, you are one that connects with the land probably better than anyone that I have ever met in my life. And I wanted to unpack that. Even in your description, you said, I live near the canyon. And that is such a perk for you. And I know that about you because I work with you. So we talk almost on a daily basis. But I want you to let's explore a little bit, talking about the land and what that means to you, what it means to live close to the canyon, what it means to be in nature. And maybe we should start this off by saying, most times you're outdoors rather than indoors. Tell me a little bit about how you just love the outdoors.
I have to be outdoors, and it doesn't matter what time of year it is. It doesn't matter if it's raining, if it's snowing, if it's 100 degrees outside, although I could do without the latter. But being outdoors is life-changing for me. I start every morning running in the canyon. It might only be 2 miles. It doesn't matter to me. It's that I'm outdoors greeting my day, because it completely gives me a mental shift, and it prepares me for the day. It's always my church. It always has been my church. I run alone, except for with my dog. I've always chosen to run alone simply because it allows me to be with my thoughts, with prayer, with thinking about other people, with looking at nature, with seeing the changes that occur on a daily basis, especially this time of year, right? What's blooming today? What's done blooming today? What are the trees looking like?
Yeah.
I'm just connected to it all, and I have to have it. I absolutely have to have it. I think it's vital for human beings to be in touch with nature, especially with the chaos that we have in our lives. So it sets me up for my day, and then I can basically handle whatever comes my way. And I start every day happy because of that. And then on the weekends, that's all I can think about is how to spend more time outdoors. So I plan either, snowshoeing trips or backpacking trips, or sometimes a combination of both, or, whatever it happens to be, hiking, running, trail stewardship, oftentimes both in the same weekend. I mean,
there's rarely a weekend, to my knowledge, that you're at home. You're out most weekends, out hiking and camping and all that. Now you refer to your sandbox. There's a part of California that you call your sandbox. Where is that, and how come that's so special to you?
Well, I call it my sandbox, and I've had a friend who actually lives in this part of the world ask me, why do you call it the sandbox? And I just say, that is my creative place. That is like where my happy spot. It's I don't know, it's just my happy spot, and that's the Eastern Sierra. And specifically anything between, say, Sonora Pass all the way down to the Whitney Zone, all the High Sierra, the backcountry, 14,000 foot peaks, beautiful lakes, streams, rivers, granite as far as the eye can see. It's just incredible. Cabin, I think you've been there. You spent some time in the sandbox. I have
some deep affection for it, but I don't get to live in it like you do.
So every chance I get, that's where I'm at. And all summer long, probably almost every weekend I'm on the east side doing something.
Yeah.
And you said, Chris, can I jump in here?
Please.
Because Elke, you said something really cool that I just want to tap into. When you were describing how you start your day, you talked about starting it outside especially because of all the chaos in our world now. And being outside brings you joy and happiness. And I so deeply resonate with that. I start my mornings, usually before the sunrise, out feeding our chickens, which are out in the field. And I love just pausing and just watching the leaves or the grasses or the sun peek over the levee, listening to the chickens and the many, many birds we have in the orchard. But it always brings me delight because there seems to be like nature is by nature chaotic, as in it's unordered by human hands, right? It exists without our boundaries. So by its existence, it is chaotic. And yet there's something about a participation in that natural chaos that brings so much calm and order to our human chaos.
And it's funny that you call it chaos.
Yeah.
It's funny that you call it chaos because I call it perfection. I do. I always say that, the more I can get away from man's manipulation in the world, the more perfect it becomes. So I seek places where I can look all around me and say, man did not manipulate this. This is, and again, I go to the spiritual side. This is God's creation, right? This is not man. So anything in nature to me is perfection because in its natural state, we haven't messed it up, hopefully, as man, right? So I look at trees and they're perfect to me. I look at flowers, they're perfect. Grass, it's all perfect. Animals, they're perfect. They're living the life they're absolutely supposed to live. And they don't have all these other, computers. They don't have things like we have, right? They're just out doing their thing and it's perfect.
Almost like you. Go ahead, Gaben. Yeah.
Have you interacted with a zone in the world where you feel like humanity has been able to draw out or draw into nature without manipulating or without ruining it? Does that make sense? Like, can it only be perfect if man is not present, or can there be a more purified sense of nature and also man's coexistence?
Ooh, that's a good question. So when I hiked the John Muir Trail, I was after a really incredible experience, and of course it was. And I did that by myself. And I just thought, I am so grateful that man made this possible for man to come out here and on this, probably 18-inch wide thread of trail, have it not impact the beauty at all other than the path that you're walking on. So everything around you, there are no reservoirs, there's nothing else that has been created by man other than incredible trails that go over the passes and make that possible so that you're not doing like a class 4 climb or, that type of thing through a meadow without completely destroying the meadow. The meadow's untouched, but for 18 inches of this thread of trail that allows you to follow through that and see its beauty. I don't know if that answers your question, but there are some ways in which man has absolutely enhanced nature by allowing us to be able to see it without destroying it.
I love that. I love that. One of the words that I have down here, Elke, is respect for nature. And how do you see a respect for nature playing out, just how we interact with it?
Well, one observation I've really made since COVID is a lot more people are out in nature. And in particular, where I live down the American River confluence, it's great to see people out in nature. But the more people who are out there, the more of a mix of people who are out there. And some people aren't quite as respectful of nature as they should be. I mean, no one should ever leave trash. No one should leave a trace, period. But unfortunately, they do. And when you get to a place that's that crowded and you've got thousands of people down there on any given weekend, you see the imprint of man. And so I think it's really important for, I can't control what people choose to do, but I think for those who can, we should do what we can to pick up those traces when we see them, whether it's picking up trash or the trail stewardship that I do, making trails more safe for people to cross, and that type of thing. But yeah, respecting it always. It's an honor to be out there. It's not a guarantee that that's going to be available to us, whether it be through fire or, development or what have you, in the case of private lands. But yeah, it's really important to respect that. And it's not about us right now. It's about Cabin's kids, your kids' kids, and beyond, and all the animals and, everything that lives out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. And that kind of goes a little bit in hand. It's a great segue into my next thought here, is about talking about stewardship, about being, good stewards of what we do. Because sometimes I think, people are out there, and I don't know that we blatantly go out there like, I'm going to go out and trash nature today. I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to spread garbage everywhere and I'm just going to trample everything. I think we go out there and we just don't have a good, consciousness about what we're doing or the impact that we're making. And can you talk to me a little bit about what stewardship looks like, maybe how we could better steward the land from your experiences, from what you've seen on the impact of the land? And then I want to explore stewarding the trails, again, man's impact or people's impact, whatever, on the trail, and how to best steward and help people enjoy nature.
Yeah. In my years of stewardship, especially in the Forest Service lands, that's probably where I've done most of it. But there is the trail manager for the American River Ranger District, which the Western States Trail travels through for about 70% of the trail. And he and I, their trail manager, we've worked extensively together. And his motto is always make it better. And that has stuck with me. So I think we can all make it better. Every opportunity we have, go outside, go out on the trails. If you see something that needs to be picked up, pick it up. Kind of make it your motto. Like, I can't just look at it and keep going. I have to pick that up. Don't trample things. Don't manipulate things. I mean, people unfortunately tag bridges across waterfalls and those types of things locally. Down in Bishop recently, I follow a group out there that, talk about making it better. They have groups of people who go out and pick up trash along the highways, in the camp areas, people who come in over the weekends and, unfortunately leave some things behind. They pick up these bags of trash in these Caltrans bags, and they leave it on the highway, and Caltrans comes and picks it up. These people go out there with the sole purpose of cleaning up the lands. And I've done that personally when I was down there. My friend has a bunch of those bags. So I spent 2 hours picking up trash on the side of Ed Powers Road outside of the Buttermilks and the Bishops. And, it's the least we can do. What's 2 hours,
Yeah.
Put on some gloves and pick up trash. So if it's on the side of the road, if it's in camp areas, if it's on trails, whatever you see that you think you might be able to make better, make it better.
I love that. Kevin, do you have any? I've got a ton of questions, but I want to leave some space here.
So there's this rumor going around about you, Elke, that I just need to ask about. And this rumor is that you can sling a mad chainsaw. That in this trail stewardship, there's maybe this side of you that comes to light here that I just want to hear about a little bit.
And I'll preface that with I told Kevin before we started recording that you're one of the most badass people that I know, Elke. Is honestly, like, I'm bragging on you, but yeah, like I told him, like, this lady can sling a chainsaw like nobody's business.
Yes.
You even named your chainsaw, right?
I do. I have 2 saws and they both have names.
Wait, okay, so what are their names?
Well, Barbie.
And wait, I'm a little bit so I just pruned 3,500 trees this winter.
Ooh.
So there's a significant part of my job that is pretty chainsaw reliant. So I'm a little bit of, so you got make and model, and then what's their name?
Okay.
That's a good question.
That's funny. I have a 251 still.
Okay.
And a 261 still. 251 is Barbie. She's like this easy start, great nimble saw.
Yeah.
I use her a lot for the smaller stuff.
Yeah.
Because she's easy to pack. I mean, I go down into canyons. So, I might be climbing out a 2,000 foot climb with the saw pack and all the fuel and everything else. So if the down trees are smaller, it's only an 18-inch bar on that one. I take Barbie.
Mhm.
This weekend, I'll be working all day Saturday to clear a course for 100K that's going on. And there's some bigger trees that fell. So my other bigger saw, 261 with a 20 is that's Eastwood, like Clint.
Eastwood, yes.
Two,
Okay, and then
261 with a 20. Those are words. I'm sure they mean something to somebody.
It's a still 261 Pro.
Yeah.
I don't know what you use, Caven, but it's a great saw.
yeah. I mean, just for little stuff around. I mean, well, first of all, I have a 10-foot pole saw, so I do a lot just from the
Oh,
ground.
those are awesome.
But then we have a couple of 270s, and then we've got. I mean, our biggest one, I think it's a 491. It's got like a, what has it got, a 40-inch bar on it? Or I mean, it's
probably
big,
like the Wood Boss or something.
yeah, it's a
felling.
large saw. It's what we use for, base cuts on the trunks of trees.
Yeah.
But I think we've got 7 or 8 different saws that we use at different times for different things. But okay, but you mentioned something else in there that for those of us who are familiar with the Auburn area, we just kind of file it away as like common knowledge, but there's going to be a lot of people listening who don't know this thing exists. So I know it's not necessarily your particular passion, but you mentioned it. So just give it a little bit of explanation. This idea of ultra endurance races, and particularly ultra endurance through these trails that you're maintaining, because you said there's a 100K race. And I also see a map behind you. Are those corollary things?
Yeah, this is the Western States. So I've ran the Western
States
Trail. Yeah, it's a 3-panel map, Squaw Valley to Auburn.
So let's just lay out some geography for people not in California. So Squaw Valley is elevation what?
Squaw Valley.
Just look on the map.
Let's see.
I think it's like 6,600 feet.
Yeah, I'd say the valley, Squaw Valley, is about 66 or so. And then the first 3 miles of the race climbs about 2,500 feet up to the escarpment. And that's the high point. And then you basically head west through several canyons.
And you're literally running the Sierra Nevada mountain range for 100 kilometers.
No, 100 miles.
100 miles, even more. That's 100 miles. You're literally just running through the mountains. And you have 24 hours. Is that right? That's the limit?
You have 30 for an official.
You have 30 hours to literally run the mountain range down to Auburn, which is just barely in the foothills, about 1,000 feet, more or less.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And people sign up for this. People choose this lifestyle.
Not only do they sign up, there's a waiting list for people to run 100 miles over an entire 24-hour period, if I'm not mistaken, right, Elke?
Well, first of all, you have to have a qualifying run. And to go back to this 100K race that's happening weekend after next, it is a qualifying run. So you can enter the lottery for Western States and have about a 2% chance of your name being drawn.
Unbelievable. Now, I want you...
Part of what you do, Elke, is you are maintaining the trails to make sure that these runners can run through the middle of the night in some assurance that the trail is not going to give out right underneath them.
Yes. So not only do we clear down trees, but we also do tread work. So, oftentimes throughout the winter, especially on heavy winter, wet months, there will be erosion, sometimes big slides. We need to go in there and repair them. We also maintain the water drainages. We do outslopes, inslopes, whatever makes sense so that the water can get off the trail as quickly as possible. We do brushing, all of that. And it's not just for runners, it's for moto. All the trails except for the initial Granite Chief Wilderness. Of course, there's no motorized anything in a wilderness area. So that's for horse and foot only. But beyond that, from the border of Granite Chief Wilderness all the way to Forest Hill, it's multi-use, meaning moto, horse, bicycles, foot traffic. And then through ASRA, Auburn State Rec Area, state parks, it's horse and foot again. So yes, we maintain the trail, clear the trail of any downed trees. In particular fire areas, post-fire, those trees, as you probably know, Caben, will continue to fall year after year after year as the trees rot. And they sometimes will cross several sections of trail, just one tree if you've got switchbacks. So you're cutting the same tree multiple times all the way down into the canyon, depending on how big the tree is. I've got some wild photos.
Wow.
What's the
and so again, sorry, Chris,
no, you're good. Keep going.
So again, for listeners, there's just there's an aura about this place when you're around a group of people, and it's no big deal to go on a 150-mile bike ride on a Saturday or go run 50 miles on a weekend. Or, I mean, it changes the tenor of kind of everything when you live in this space that's just like, oh yeah, of course we do 100-mile races. That's just how humans live. And the rest of the world's like, no, that's not how humans live. What are you doing?
Who are these crazy people? Well, if you come into Auburn, California, it says the endurance capital of the world. I don't know if that's self-proclaimed or if that's an official title, but that does say when coming into Auburn for sure.
Yeah.
Elke, what's the farthest you've ever had to hike in with a chainsaw to take care of the trail?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Maybe 6 or so miles each way.
Okay.
But some of those canyons, yeah, I would say 6 miles. If we're schlepping a saw all the way from, say, the top of Devil's Thumb over to Last Chance, and we'll be clearing everything on both sides. But usually we try to clear one side of the canyon on one day, cache all of our equipment at the bottom, come back the next day, grab our equipment, go up the other side, and then we schlep the whole thing back out.
That's incredible. Now, I know that there's some terminology. As one who's not allowed around the power tools, I'm pointing at myself. This guy with two thumbs pointing at me. There's some terminology. I so appreciate all the training that you've gone through. Because being out there, especially 6 miles out from probably anything, if something happened to you with a chainsaw, that's bad news. So I appreciate all the training that you've gone through. But take me through some of the terminology that you have when you're out there maintaining the trail. So I know a swamper is a thing. Tell me about a swamper and maybe some of the terms that you have when you're out there maintaining the trails and cutting those trees.
A swamper is a thing, and I have the best swamper in the world with my good friend Bruce. If I let him, and usually by the end of the day I beg him, they'll carry your pack, right? So they carry your saw for you, because operating a saw, as Caben can tell you, gets tiring pretty quickly. And especially in the heat, and especially, in those canyons when you've been hiking, and then you're covered head to toe in PPE. So I wear pants, I wear boots, I wear chaps, Kevlar chaps. I never saw without those. Long sleeve shirt. I've got head pro on, a hard hat. I've got ear pro on, glasses, gloves, and it might be 90 degrees out there in the canyon, and you heat up really quick. So a swamper oftentimes will carry your gear for you, and then they'll also behind you clear all the branches. If you're limbing a tree first, and then you cut the sections of it, they're going to clear all of that off the trail for you, so you can move on up to the next tree. And they'll also help to create a safe escape route, because oftentimes out there, and I'm sure this can be the case for you too, Caben, you might have, you always have to look at situational awareness to see, if I free up this tree right here that is leaning on this other tree, what could possibly go wrong, right? Is this other tree going to shift? Could it snap? Is there a side bind in the fallen log? Is there a, top bind, bottom bind? I've had trees in the canyon that will literally snap when I start releasing them. They've got side binds, meaning they're leaning very hard against another tree. And that tree is literally holding that fallen tree into place. And when you release that tension, things can get very scary. So I've actually had to jump back from saws to let a tree continue to pop.
Oh, wow.
So, we are trained, we're certified. We have to go back and get recerts. We got first aid, basic stuff that we carry around with us. And oftentimes we'll carry Forest Service radios, call into Grass Valley, let them know we're out there, and we let them know that we're safe when we come back out. So safety is paramount.
Absolutely.
Can only imagine. Now, I don't want to leave the Western States thing yet, because this is a big deal. Like, I guess if you live around the area, you don't realize kind of how big of a deal this 100-mile run is. But I want you to brag on yourself for a little bit. I think you and your daughter have a record, don't you? Or there's some thing that you did with Western States that's pretty notable.
Well, we both finished it. So we're the only mom daughter to have finished it.
That's a huge accomplishment right there.
Accomplishment.
Pretty cool.
Wow.
And a cool thing about the Western states, and I think that you've done it, like I'm thinking of like a NASCAR or Indy or whatever. There's pit crews for these runners, aren't there? Aren't there people that are actually like the runners have their own, like, here's a new set of shoes, or you've done that, right? Pit crew for a runner?
Yes. So along the course, there are 23 aid stations. So you're usually getting some kind of self-help. In other words, the aid stations are going to have fluids for you, electrolytes, Cokes, all that good stuff they're going to have. Of course, this year is going to be a little bit different because of COVID, but they're going to have anything from grilled cheese sandwiches to popsicles to you name it.
Wow.
And then you also have crews. So there are certain crew spots along the course, not at every aid station. Some places crew are not allowed. And your crew basically sets up and they've got a chair for you. They've got all your things laid out for you, whether you need clean socks, shoes, you know, a new top or whatever, and to refill your hydration pack with whatever, you know, nutrition that you need for the next 20, 30 miles until you see them again.
Jeez,
That's incredible.
Just another marathon until you need more people. Marathon through the forest. And again, just again for context here, when most people hear the words Western states, they think of things like California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, right? But what we're talking about here, the name of the race is called Western States,
100,
which can be a little bit confusing. Yeah. And it's a 100-mile race called Western States. So Google it, look it up on Wikipedia. You can read all about it. But yeah, it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of like the Mount Everest of running. And yeah.
WS100.org, I think it is.
Yeah, absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
It started, I think, back in the 70s or something like that.
When
somebody just decided, I'm going to run that trail.
Well, actually, it started out with the Tebas, which is a horse endurance. It's a 100-mile horse run. And Gordy Ansley, his horse went lame, and he said, you know, forget that. I'm just going to finish the rest of it on foot. The rest of it's history.
And that still goes today. So I can tell listeners, I'll tell you that this Western State ends at the high school stadium, which is about the window in front of me, about 1,000 yards outside of my house here. And I can hear the PA announcer all through the night going. So this is the one time. It's cool living by the stadium, but it's like all night people are finishing this race. And it is incredible to see people come through at the end.
It's incredible. And the record is like just a hair over 14 hours.
Oh my God. 100 miles.
Course record.
And this is people all over the world, right? Like all over the world, people are coming to this.
Yeah. But imagine someone in the Indy 500 whose car wrecks and they're like, you know what? I'm just going to finish this race on foot. I'm just going to run it. And then a bunch of people in the stadium are like, that looks like a good idea. We're going to sign up to run it next year instead of driving it. Like
Let's
that's
all
kind
run
of
it.
mental state that was created around. Like this is a very unique group of people.
It is. They're very driven people.
But you have done that. You have not only have you joined that cohort of people who have attempted it, but you've joined that even more rarefied air of people who've completed it.
It's a special community. I mean, you know, it's an honor to be able to.
Special is a word for it. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's truly an honor because it's the most, it's the oldest. It's full of history. It runs through some really historical, remarkable places from the gold rush. These are towns, ghost towns with gold mining equipment still left. Like obviously no one's there anymore, but back in the day, thousands of people lived in these places, and the trail goes right through it. It's awesome.
And for our listeners, it is. You are going down into canyons, and you are crossing rivers, and you are coming back up the other side of the canyon. Like it is an endurance run. It is not just a flat level. You know, we're going to be running for 100 miles on the level plane, basically.
It climbs about 18,000 feet and drops about 22,000 feet throughout the race.
Yeah. It's so the fact that you and your daughter finished, that's unbelievable. I mean, so much respect for you.
I mean, for her especially. I mean, she's finishing her undergrad, so she had a full load. She worked full time. She's also in the reserves, and she trained for Western States and finished it on a very difficult year. So I always give her, you know, tremendous kudos because I don't know how she did it. You know, it's just amazing.
She's got her mother's drive.
Yep.
For sure. Hey, talk to me a little bit about getting out in nature, getting out as a retreat, as a place of solace and spiritual refreshment. What does that mean for you?
Again, it's just extremely vital to recalibrate yourself in that way. So I choose to do a lot of solo backpacking trips, and beginning in 2017, I think it was, I decided to start doing those on snowshoes as well. I really only did my first solo snowshoeing multi-day just a couple weekends ago on the Tahoe Rim Trail. And that was really fun. Did a couple of sections of the Tahoe Rim Trail. But again, it's important to be able to, for a lot of the reasons I like to do it solo is because I feel it makes me stronger. I'm reliant only on my own knowledge. I'm not leaning on anyone else for their expertise to get me out of whatever pickle. I'm going to use my own brain and my own, experience, if you will. If something goes awry, you got to figure it out. And Chris knows that something kind of went awry on this last one, but it was okay. It was just kind of a minor inconvenience. I actually forgot my lighter at home, which is a giant no-no. And my cooking device, which has an igniter on it, decided it did not want to work on night 3. So no way to get water because I was in the snow, and I don't bring a tent. So I literally just camp on the snow. So I got a shovel, dig down just a couple of feet.
You are a crazy person.
I love everything
just
about
gonna
this.
sleep on the
Going.
snow.
I just love how casual you are about it. And so like maybe you just went to your local Target, but you're like, gotta go home in the snow and set up my sleeping bag.
It's really not a big deal. I mean, the nice thing about snow camping is as long as you bring your lighter and you can melt snow, you've got endless water, right? Yeah. There are no people out there. You don't have to have permits. There are no bugs out there. You know, usually there are no bears, especially if you're high enough. So, you know, it's nirvana as long as you've got the right gear. And I've got a negative 40-degree bag that is just awesome. And so not only did I forget my lighter, but on night 3 too, my sleeping pad decided it wanted to have 2 holes from the night before. So I literally slept on the snow with no boundaries between the snow and my bag. But, you know, it was a bit of a sleepless night, but you know, you open up your eyes on your sleepless night and stars everywhere. And, you know, you're above Lake Tahoe and you look down and it's like, what could be better? Who wouldn't want to do that?
That's the reward.
Incredible. And you're by yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing this. I mean, how blessed am I to be able to, number one, have the desire to do it. Number two, have trust in myself. And again, my faith comes into that too, right? You have to make smart choices, but it's nice to know it's not all about you, that, you know, there's a greater force out there watching after you. As long as you make smart choices. God's not going to have your back if you decide to, I don't know what.
My wife, my wife wanted me, she's like, ask Elke this. She's like, knowing what an enthusiast you are about the outdoor, how evangelical you will, that you're for the outdoors. And she's like, you know, for people who enjoy looking at the outdoors, but don't enjoy so much getting outdoors, what would you say that might help motivate, where maybe I'd just rather be on the computer, maybe I'd rather, you know, enjoy sleeping in my own bed? What would you say to somebody like that? To what are we missing?
Well, I was just going to say, you don't know what you're missing. I mean,
okay.
Number one, we all need to detach from computers and TVs and all of that to really think clearly. I can't think of a time when I had more mental clarity at home, for sure. I have to be in the mountains. I have to be outdoors to have that mental clarity. It helps me figure things out. It helps me with gratitude. You know, everything else, there's no chaos. There's no interference. It's just pure connectivity to where we came from.
You were telling
and
me.
what I'm hearing you say though too also is that it's not just about that particular moment, but that there's something, maybe the word
Universal.
transcendent is too strong. Yeah, but it carries so far beyond just that one moment. It carries into every facet of your life, right? It becomes this totalizing understanding of reality that informs just so much beyond just the mountains, right? It actually gives you sanity or presence or meaning or purpose or some bigger things than
Yes,
just a night and than just a sleeping bag on a hillside, right?
exactly. And it's also a reminder, and I think it's really important to feel small in the world, right? It's humbling. It kind of puts you in your place, and you're just this tiny speck of a much larger picture, right? And I don't know, it's just again, it's great to go out with friends. It's great to go out with groups sometimes, but I think it's really important for me, especially, to be out there on my own as well, just to have that full entire being cleansing, if you will. I listen to music a lot out there too.
Oh, okay.
And that actually adds to it, whether it's I listen to music of all kinds. And the thing that's beautiful about that is when I hear those songs that I heard when I was out there, it takes me right back out there. And it puts me in that mental state. It's like, I remember I saw that bald eagle. There's this beautiful lake. And that's what I see when I hear that song.
So good.
That's amazing. We were talking a little bit earlier about before this about pine and what the smell of pine actually does for you mentally. What was that again?
It changes the brain chemistry. The smell of certain trees, different flora outdoors changes the brain, as does just the experience of seeing it, right? But there have been many different researchers looking into the benefits of being outdoors, and there's no arguing the importance of it. It just really is. I think that people who really suffer with depression, I think being outdoors more often could be helpful to that. Again, there's no interference of the things that we're bombarded with on a daily basis. Nothing. I mean, I often think, like, on multi-day trips out there, it's like anything could be happening in the world and I'm completely unaware of it. Isn't that wonderful?
Do you have any thoughts for somebody who maybe the outdoors, as we're describing the outdoors, isn't as readily accessible? Maybe they're in a more urban environment, don't have access to as many trees, like we're talking about. Any thoughts on what folks might be able to do just to maybe find nature in small places or do those mental resets?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that even in urban areas, they've got public places like parks. And if you go there and just, pick a good spot under some trees or what have you, and just sort of lay there and zone out and just stare at the sky. I mean, you can find nature in the smallest places. You can find nature walking down the street in a city. I mean, there's things struggle to grow. It's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Look at weeds in the sidewalk. That's nature of sorts in of itself. Oftentimes those weeds are edible too. It's pretty funny.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, all your miner's lettuce growing outside, Chris?
I do have a lot of miner's lettuce in my yard. Elke, there's a big thing that happened to you over the winter that being outdoors, and speaking of hiking long distances, you were asked to be part of a group that was retracing the Forlorn Hope Party. For those that don't know, that was part of the Donner Party, and that's as a California kid, that's a big part of our state history that we learn. Can you take us a little bit through that? Because I know that was a really big thing, and it might be a documentary that's coming out, but can you take us through that? Maybe a little bit about the history of what happened there, and then how you got to, retrace their steps and what that meant to you.
Sure. Yeah. So the Donner Party, of course, got their name primarily because, as opposed to the rest of the immigrants, they got stuck in the Truckee Valley. And over winter, which arrived early, they took a wrong turn en route to trying to get to Sutter's Fort in Sacramento. And because of that wrong turn, they were delayed in their arrival into the Donner area of Truckee. was delayed, and snowstorms came in early that year. It was actually 100-year record snowfall year. And so different parties tried to set out to go get help from the other side of the Sierra, which basically the closest place was Wheatland, Johnson's Ranch in Wheatland. And parties turned around and came back, turned around and came back, turned around and came back, until this one party they put together. It started out with 16 individuals. And they set out, it was 16. 2 people ended up turning around and coming back, but the rest of them forded on. And the leader of the group, Charles Stanton, who knew this route and had made it a few times, was guiding them. They didn't have a compass, anything else. And Charles Stanton became snowblind, unfortunately, and perished even before they got to what we would call Immigrant Gap. That's where he went snowblind. He perished there. And the rest of the Forlorn Hope group, with no idea where to go during these blizzards, ended up taking what they thought to be an easier route, and ended up going down the North Fork the Middle Fork instead of the North Fork. If you think of Bear Valley, there's a lookout, and you look down there, Highway 20, that was the correct route. They ended up going south down into the Middle Fork.
So when you're referring to that, that's actually the river, the American River, that would be flowing through the canyons here. So to again set the scene for our listeners, basically, if you're coming across, and I believe this was in the 1846 is when this happened. So you've got covered wagons that are coming over. You've got to now go over the Sierra Nevada mountains, and the goal is to come into the Sacramento Valley, and then eventually either stay there or go more towards San Francisco area. And so these folks get stuck up there. 100-year snow that's coming in. Now there's snow they're socked in. The leader guy, basically not even a third of the way towards their final destination, gets snowblind and unfortunately perishes. They take a wrong turn. They're following down the river what they think is the right way, which ends up delaying them even more. And again, they're out there in the snow, Elke. They don't have the minus 40-degree bag. They don't have the Kevlar. They don't have the instant lighter, right? These people are in basically long sleeves and pants, basically with maybe a blanket, trying to go through this, waist deep snow. And so eventually, and for us elementary school kids, you hear the Donner Party and you're like, ooh, cannibalism. That's the people that they ate the other people because they were stuck in the snow. And unfortunately it turned to that. But there was a group that basically struck out and said, we're going to go find help. We know it's down in the Sacramento Valley. We got to come out of these mountains and get some help. And eventually they made it and then sent help back, which was good. But you basically had an opportunity to this winter retrace those steps.
Yes, we did. So we had a party of 4 in our expedition, 2 women and 2 men. Bob and Tim, Bob Crowley, Tim Tweetmeyer, myself, and Jennifer Hemman. And Bob and Tim have been researching everything they can possibly get their hands on to find this lost course, this lost path. It's not a trail. A lot of it's, bushwhacking cross country, down steep canyons, up the other side, back down again, crossing the American River a couple of times. So they spent 7 years researching the Forlorn Hope and the path that they took. And they decided they wanted to do this. And upon conversations, et cetera, they decided, heck, the main portion of the survivors of the Forlorn Hope were women. So we should probably invite some women. So long story short, I was invited to go. It was only weeks before they were going to set out. I think I had about 4 weeks notice. And of course didn't feel like I was quite in shape for it. But once I found out, this is more honoring the Forlorn Hope, and it's not about us. It's not about trying to get this done in any particular time. Gave ourselves 5 days to do it, but it took the Forlorn Hope 30 days, by the way, just because they were starved before they even went out there. And of course their starvation became much worse, hence the cannibalism. But that wasn't the focus, right? It was trying to find their lost trail. Yeah. So through many, many different types of research, they found it. They went out and researched it over the summer. and map this out so that we could follow that path. And that's exactly what we did. On the anniversary of the Forlorn Hope's departure in 1846 is when we went out in 2020 during COVID and all that stuff. And we set out with our snowshoes and our backpacks, and we followed the course.
And you do it in 5 days?
We did it in 5 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Walk us through those final miles as you're coming up to, it's called Johnson's Ranch, is where their end destination was heading for. Walk us through, what those final miles were like and kind of what that meant to you and how you were feeling as you were coming towards the end.
Yeah, there were some very poignant moments on any given day, just knowing where certain people had perished along the way. The camp of death was a very surreal moment. That was on day 3. Day 5, we started very close to Lake of the Pines, and our final destination was Johnson's Ranch, about 26 miles. And on that day, we all just had minimal gear. We didn't have to carry backpacks. We just carried our hydration packs, and we had on our running clothes. And we had to go through some private property to get ultimately to Camp Far West and all that. So worked with some property owners, which was very gracious of them to let us through. But I had never been to Camp Far West, and really had never been to, didn't really know about Johnson's Ranch before all of this. I mean, I'd read The Indifferent Stars Above years before on a snowshoeing hike, oddly. So it was pretty amazing that I brought that book with me on that trip a few years back. And then there I was actually following their footsteps. So, but there were some people who were following us along the way, and there were a couple of different groups in cars following us as we made our way toward Camp Far West, and they'd stop and, talk to us a little bit more. And I asked one of the men, because he was local, I said, "Can you point to where Johnson's Ranch is?" He said, "It's right down there in those trees." And of course, it's still, 6 or 7 miles away, but that's when it really hit me. It's like, this is where they went. And as we went toward Camp Far West, there are some historical markers there. And that is where you can first see the wagon ruts, because the lake was really low. The reservoir was really low at that point. You can see the wagon ruts as plain as day from the immigrants. About 100 wagons came into Johnson's Ranch on any given day for a few years. Those wagon ruts are still completely visible today.
Wow.
Johnson's Ranch is private property. So I will say it hit me a lot sooner than it hit the rest of the group. And I just had tears streaming down. I was like, I can't believe it. There are artifacts along the way. When the lake gets really low, there's still just artifacts from all the immigrants. It's amazing. But when we actually crossed over the property line to get onto Johnson's Ranch, and we pulled out cards of the Forlorn Hope. We had cards of each individual, their birth date, their date of death, any background that we had. And we each carried individuals in our hands and carried them all the way into Johnson's Ranch. And it was just, I have goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah.
It was so moving. And then we placed those cards at the site of the adobe house, which is where they all finished, those who survived. I am completely summarizing how this all went down, but we placed the cards down where that adobe house had once stood. And there were historians there. It was a very small group of people. Our families were there, but it was emotional for everyone.
Now you had a camera person that was with you the entire time filming it. There was kind of a trailer that I saw put together, some incredible footage of you guys moving through the night, through the snow, through the shadows, through the terrain, which was rough terrain. And this might possibly be a documentary. Is that right? Is there still plans for that?
Yes, there's still plans for that. So Bob and Keith Sutter is the photographer, and he was embedded with us many times, not the whole time. Sometimes some of the footage I took from a GoPro or even my iPhone. But yes, that's the plan, is to create a documentary, not just of our expedition, of course, but the whole history of Forlorn Hope. Yeah,
absolutely.
Wow.
Incredible.
I'm born and raised California, and I'm already learning things about this, because it's very easily fictionalized in kind of the folklore and mythology of California. So that's amazing, just to even really learn a little bit.
It's hard to say if the remaining people back at Donner Lake would have ever survived without the success of the Forlorn Hope. So they are absolutely heroes.
Wow.
None of the women perished.
And that's what I want. So talk about that, because that is an interesting fact, that the women didn't perish.
The women did not
talk
perish.
a little bit about
that. I think part of that has to do with women have slower metabolisms. We have higher body fat.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't tend to starve quite as quickly as men might because of your higher muscle mass. So yeah, they survived. It's 3 of them had children back at Donner Lake.
Mm-hmm.
So they had even all that much more reason to fight for their lives.
Well, and what I read too, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but there was almost this communal aspect about it where they were figuring out how to share and how to stretch whatever they had amongst, and how hard must it have been if you've got somebody else's kids that you're watching and you've got your own kids and you're trying to figure out
whose kids do I feed first?
Whose kids do I feed?
Yes. Yeah. No,
Can't imagine.
The burden of that is unbelievable. And leaving your children under the care of someone else, knowing that, you're adding that burden to that woman's life.
Mm-hmm.
So then this group that you followed make it to Johnson Ranch, and then the same people turn around and hike back up into the snowy mountains with relief, or how does that play out?
Yes, one of the individuals turned right back around and went back in the group to go back and get family.
Oh my word. And at that point, did she take the correct route back up the mountain?
This was one of the men, William Eddy, and he took others with him. Yes, and they made the correct route back. But there's just all kinds of drama. It was never smooth sailing for any of them. That was just an incredible snow year, so it's not like the conditions ever got any better. But they were following the correct route, at least in those subsequent trips.
So when they went back, did they have supplies, or how specifically did they save everyone at Donner Lake?
They did. They had supplies.
Okay.
And they couldn't bring everyone out from Donner Lake. People were in various stages of,
malnutrition and
fit. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Incredible.
That's
Elke,
great.
I have so enjoyed this conversation, and it's just so incredible to hear about all of your experience. You are really, like I said, one of the most badass people that I know. And we have so enjoyed this. Caben, are there any other questions that you have just to kind of round out our conversation today?
Elke, I feel like we could talk all night, which is just a lot of joy for me, because I just enjoy hearing your thoughts about the world and the way you see the world. And what I'm hearing, just even between the words you're saying, such a deep, abiding, still respect for deep time, for time beyond lifetimes, for the time of mountain ranges and the time of history. And you carry that honor and you carry that memory in your body as you move in the mountains. And I feel that coming from you in this conversation. And so I just want to acknowledge it and just say, wow, how profound and good it is to be in the presence of someone like you who embodies that energy in the world and brings it to us. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Those are kind words.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, it has really been our pleasure, honestly, like to hear exactly what Caben couldn't have said it better. Your light is obviously shining, and I'm so excited that there would be so many people that can be exposed to that. You are actually a fantastic photographer, and you are so good at documenting where you are, what you see. Your nature photography, honestly, is so good. Where can people find you on Instagram? How can they find you on Instagram?
I'm California _wildflower on Instagram.
Seriously, check Elke. I mean, your shots of Poppy, you inspire me. And just when you take your dog Lupin out, and you have a tree that you take pictures of occasionally right by your house. I think it's called Eastwood.
It's also Eastwood. It's literally
don't let the two Eastwoods meet, right? Keep them separate.
Exactly. And yes, no chainsaw is ever going to touch that Eastwood.
Yeah.
Yep.
But if you want some peace and calm, Elke just posts some incredible pictures of the canyon near where she lives, especially in the canyon's so beautiful when there's these low-lying clouds. Elke, you capture that so magnificently. So thank you for sharing that with the world as well, and giving us a chance to mentally reset even through the images that you take.
Thank you, Chris. Having those images, it's a great reminder, when you're having a stress day or something, you just flip through and look at those and say, gosh, I have a really good life. Be grateful for that. I think it's really important to be able to document that, and you can relive those moments, just like the music, right?
So good.
So good.
Well, we have loved this conversation. Well, I can only speak for myself. I have loved this conversation.
Yes,
I hope
absolutely.
Cabe and you have too, and our listeners as well.
Undoubtedly.
I love this.
Thank you so much, Elke.
Thanks you too for your insight and great questions. This has really been enjoyable.